So everything starts with this guy, Carl. And Carl is born into a very decent family in Kansas. Like his father is a respected lawyer. And when he's just a teenager, his father passes away, leaving him around $200,000 in inheritance, which his mother keeps for him since he's young to be accountable for such large money. But despite his father's death, Carl grows up to be a decent kid in school. But then over time, around when he was in high school, Carl's academic and behavioral records start deteriorating, mainly because he starts drinking a lot. But still, despite all of this, he makes it into college, which he drops out of shortly after in order to serve in the Marine Corps. And he does that for about 8 years. But unfortunately, he botches his career again due to alcohol problems, and he gets discharged. So now he's back at home, living with his mom, drinking his brains out every single day. And around 1944, unfortunately, his mother also passes away, and Carl gets almost all of his inheritance. So as you'd expect, he drinks even more now, since he has all the money in the world. But not only that, apparently he's also addicted to gambling and makes very bad investment choices like high-risk businesses. So by around 1951, he almost loses all of his money and goes broke. And as a result, he gets into all sorts of crimes, sometimes even very petty ones. Like he would get into a taxi, take the driver to some secure place, and then rob him. But then one day, he gets caught stealing only $33, and he gets arrested and eventually gets sentenced to 5 years because he has multiple records before this. But after serving only 15 months, he gets released on bail. But for now, let's stop talking about Carl and talk about this woman, Bonnie. Bonnie was born in 1912 in Missouri and grew up in a family farm. When she grew up and became a woman, she married a guy called Raymond. And by many counts, the couple seemed to be very respected in their community. But then, somehow, over time, Bonnie starts to develop severe alcoholism. And in 1950, the two of them get divorced, and she gets custody of the house, and she starts operating a kind of private prostitution arrangement there. So you could say she's making some amount of money. Then in 1953, in what I can only suspect was through this prostitution business, she and Carl meet. Both of them fall in love right away and get married. I mean, it makes sense because both of them were heavy drinkers, and because Bonnie was making some amount of money at the time and Carl wasn't, she was the one providing for both of them. But the problem is, even though they have some income through Bonnie, it cannot support their lifestyle. Like, they spend a lot of money on alcohol and gambling, so over time they go broke. And since they need their money for drinking, they start brainstorming ways of making some money. And around 1953, both of them start discussing a man by the name of Robert. And Robert is a very wealthy man. Like, he has an automobile dealer stores and is a Cadillac franchise holder. And coincidentally, at some point in the past, Carl had once attended a military academy with Robert's adopted son, Paul. And through that, Carl learns that Robert has a young biological son named Robert Jr., also known as Bobby, who's only 6 years old at the time. So now, they plan a whole scheme to kidnap the child and then ask for ransom money. But this is when everything starts to get pretty ugly. They wanted to make sure that the child could never testify against them, even after they received the ransom. So they decide they would unalive him immediately after they kidnap him. In preparation for the kidnapping, Carl purchases a and he digs a grave in Bonnie's backyard. He also makes a ransom note. You know, those ransom notes where they use letter stickers, demanding around $600,000 in 10s and 20s, mainly to avoid being traced in police suspicion. So one day, on the morning of September 28th, 1953, at around 10:55 a.m., Bonnie goes to the school where Bobby studies. Then she tells the caretakers that she is Bobby's aunt and that his mother suffered a heart attack, and that his mother wishes to see her son immediately. You know, all sorts of bullshit. And for some reason, the school never verifies this with the parents, and they let Bobby go with her. So immediately, Bonnie takes Bobby to a parking lot where Carl is waiting with a car, and the kid just enters the vehicle without resistance. The couple then drive across the Missouri-Kansas state line into rural Johnson County, Kansas, and they stop around a field known as Moody Farm. So now, they're there with the kid, and they decide that it is time to execute the first phase of their plan, which is unfortunately unaliving the kid. First, Carl tries to strangle the kid with a cord, but is unable to complete the act, so he strikes the boy with the butt of a .38 caliber revolver, and then he shoots him in the head, which unfortunately unalives Bobby. Then they wrap the body in a trap and bury it in the hole they dug before abducting him. After that, Carl starts mailing the ransom note, instructing the family to communicate through a newspaper advertisement and follow specific instructions for the drop. And he does this because he doesn't want direct communication and wants to keep everything cryptic. And of course, in the note, he leaves out the important detail that Bobby is not alive anymore, which Robert obviously does not know. Following this, Robert immediately contacts the police, and because the case involves a kid, the FBI becomes involved right away. Over the next several days, Carl makes numerous phone calls to Robert's residence, and he makes very confusing instructions. Sometimes he called them to a location for the ransom drop, but then cancels at the last minute to throw them off. He gives all sorts of false locations to confuse and mislead the police, but after multiple failed attempts at drop locations, the ransom is successfully delivered in the early hours of October 5th, 1953, which Carl and Bonnie carefully retrieve, and this becomes the largest ransom ever paid in the US at the time. The couple then drive away to St. Louis, Missouri, where they begin making it rain right and left. They frequently visit multiple bars, drinking all night, rent an apartment, and buy cars. And they keep doing this for a while, and they seem to never get caught. But then enter John. John is a taxi driver who drove Bonnie and Bobby on the day of the abduction. And even after the kidnapping, Carl and Bonnie would call John to pick them up, like whenever they went to collect ransom money or when they needed to move around after being wasted from drinking the whole day. And through time, he starts noticing their erratic spending and sudden monetary capabilities, and he is not buying all of this at all. So he goes to the police and reports them. And on October 6th, 1953, Carl gets arrested in a hotel where he was staying, and with him, the police seizes only $288,000, which is less than half of the ransom money. And Carl confesses and also snitches on Bonnie, and then the police arrests Bonnie. Bonnie also provides a corroborative confession detailing the murder in place of burial. So the police goes to Bonnie's backyard and retrieves the corpse, and both defendants get charged on the federal level because they cross state lines, and they plead guilty, and both of them get sentenced to death. And on December 18th, 1953, which is 81 days after the crime, Carl and Bonnie are executed in Missouri's gas chamber.